Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
That was good.
Not only is his minister being mocked in Quebec's media, but also it's being said that we voted against bringing retirement age down to 65 and voted against increasing the OAS. But it was always buried in bills with other interference and measures which were unacceptable for Quebec. The Prime Minister and his minister are misleading people. Can the Prime Minister admit that there was never a specific vote just on increasing the GIS or just on the retirement age? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, the Bloc Québécois leader becomes incredibly defensive when we suggest that they're only here to pick fights, that they're only here to oppose measures which will be good for Quebecers and for Canadians. They do not want the Government of Canada to work well for Quebecers. That's why the Bloc Québécois voted against dental care, which is now helping hundreds of thousands of Canadians everywhere in Canada and in Quebec. It is getting these people dental treatment that they could not have afforded previously. We're here to invest in Quebecers and Canadians. The Bloc Québécois is here to pick fights. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Prime Minister defends horror stories worthy of Halloween, even though this Halloween might be his last as Prime Minister. Up to 1 million Quebecers, up to 4 million Canadians are affected by the Bloc Québécois bill. The Prime Minister has not clearly replied to our question. The Prime Minister allowed his minister to insult the intelligence of organizations which represent seniors. Does the Prime Minister realize that he is causing financial vulnerability among 4 million Canadians, which includes 1 million Quebecers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That was a reference to an election being called before Christmas.
We have clearly shown that we are always there for seniors. We always invest in seniors and we invest in the most vulnerable. That's what we did when we increased the GIS by $1,000 for the most vulnerable seniors. This is what we're doing in helping older seniors have a bit more money in their pockets because they live longer and sometimes their savings run out. All while costs are rising. We will always be here to listen and to think about how we can best support seniors. We will always support seniors, we'll always be there for seniors, but we will not be there for block squabbles. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Magazine asked this question this week: why is Canada's economy falling behind America's? It goes on to note that national income per person was 80% of the U.S. in Canada in the decade before the pandemic. It is now just 70%, the worst gap in decades. So will the Prime Minister doesn't answer my questions, maybe he'll answer the economist's questions. Why is our economy falling so far behind the Americans? Is it because of his quadrupling carbon tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why foreign direct investment is up by 60% since 2015 is because, contrary to what the Harper government put forward, we're actually leading on the fight against climate change, on green energy, on a responsible building for a sustainable future. That means countries around the world want to invest. In fact, last year, Mr. Speaker, we were the third largest recipient in the world of foreign direct investment after U.S.
The foreign interference?
Number one for people investing in Canada. We're going to continue to invest.
Name the 11.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, Canada's workers get 55 cents of investment for every dollar an American worker gets, and only 65 cents for every dollar an OECD average worker gets. For a net 450 billion Canadian investment dollars have poured out into the U.S., more than have come back under this Prime Minister's 9 years. And The Economist points out that our GDP per capita is now lower than Alabama. And it says, and I quote, catching up to Alabama may soon seem like a distant dream. Why?
What? What the hell's going on with our country?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing difficult times right now, which is why we made the choice to invest in things like dental care, like cutting child care fees in half for families right across the country, $10 a day in 6 jurisdictions across the country. Why we've chosen to step up on dental, why we're choosing to step up on pharmacare to deliver free insulin and prescription contraceptives to people who are having to make choices between their health and their rent or their food. These are the things we're choosing to make because we are putting the best balance sheet in the G7, the lowest deficit in the G7, in service of Canadians who need support.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canada has the worst mortgage debt, the worst inflation.
Yeah, and now they've
That is
increased borrowing power.
the most significant consumer debt of all G7 nations. Now,
30-year
The
mortgages,
Economist has
man.
asked the following question: why is Canada falling behind the American economy? The GDP per capita in Canada is only 70% of what it is in the States. So here is the question in The Economist: why are Canadians falling behind Americans? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the International Monetary Fund has projected that Canada will have stronger growth next year than the United States. We are at the top of the pack in the G7 when it comes to
That's just not true.
the smallest debt to GDP and deficit to GDP ratio. Our macroeconomic situation is very sound. Here's what we want to do for Canadians. We want to offer them services and programs which will help them, like dental care, like school food programs. We are here to invest. The Conservatives are here to cut. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The GDP, that is, the per capita growth in Canada, is lower today than it was 10 years ago. This is the worst GDP growth per capita of all Canadian prime ministers in decades. There's also been the most significant consumer debt of all G7 countries, and now our GDP per capita is lower than Alabama's, Mr. Speaker. How is it that while America is getting richer, Canadians and Canada are becoming poorer?
Oh, he said we're going to beat
Prime Minister.
America's economy next year, though.
Mr. Speaker, our population growth has been stronger than that of other G7 countries. That
We're
has
bringing in more
also
immigrants.
led
That's something to brag about.
Positive things. Economy. Our economy has grown. Our growth is speeding up. We're projected to grow our economy faster than the United States next year. We also have the best budget situation of all G7 countries. We are not opting for austerity and cuts like the Conservatives do. We prioritize the programs and services that Canadians need, because that's how we'll get through this. The Right Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Mr. Speaker, homeless kills.
Yeah, Trudeau is delusional.
It's not a picture, but it's a sad reality. People are dying in the streets. And that's why the federal housing advocate urged this Liberal government to take concrete action on the encampment crisis. Since then, nothing at all. The minister has done nothing. People are still spending the nights in their cars or on the street. It's a real crisis, but not for this government. What will it take for the Liberals to provide a roof, a bed, and security for the homeless across this country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in municipalities across the country to help them invest and support people who are homeless. We are taking action, Mr. Speaker, but we understand that this is a shared jurisdiction between the provinces, municipalities, and yes, the federal government. Yes, we can be here to invest, which is what we're doing. No one should have to sleep in the street in Canada, and that's why we're here to make the necessary investment with the municipalities and provinces. Unfortunately, it's something that the Conservatives want to cut.
The Honourable Member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Cette réponse est clairement pas assez. Over 2,600 veterans in Canada without a home. Legions and community organizations in Nanaimo Ladysmith are doing what they can, but need the support. Shamefully, the Liberals promised funds in the 2022 budget, yet veterans have yet to see a dime. Liberals break promises and Conservatives cut help. Veterans and their families deserve better. Why is the Prime Minister, like Conservatives, okay with leaving veterans in the cold?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, when the Conservatives nickeled and dimed veterans and shuttered veteran services offices, we not only reopened them, but we invested tens of billions of dollars in more supports for veterans right across this country. We've continued to work with veterans organizations, with municipal authorities to deliver on more housing, on greater supports for veterans. We know there's more to do, but we have invested tens of billions of dollars in this issue, and we will continue to be there for veterans, unlike Conservatives that keep using them for photo ops and nickel and diming them at the same time.
No, Conservatives have never used veterans for photo ops.
The Honourable Member from Scarborough-Agincourt.
27% of the residents in my riding of Scarborough-Agincourt are seniors. They remember when the previous government cut their pensions, increased the retirement age, and made life more difficult for them. Since 2015, our government has provided much-needed relief for seniors. Can the Prime Minister remind Canadians of the concrete vision we have taken to support seniors across the country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Scarborough-Agincourt for her question and her hard work. She is right. Seniors remember the Harper era. One of the very first things we did when we got elected was to restore retirement age to 65 after the Conservatives raised it to 67, and we monumentally boosted seniors' benefits, both GIS and OAS. And today, 800,000 Canadians, many of them seniors, have been able to see the dentist thanks to our dental care program. While the opposition leader would bring seniors back to the Harper era, we've chosen fairness for every generation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Not only has the Prime Minister and his government taxed Canadians into poverty, his former Environment Minister called single moms and small businesses arsonists because they oppose the carbon tax. Meanwhile, he ignored the warnings of his own Parks Department that the Jasper Valley had turned into a tinderbox. Warnings that go back to 2017, 7 years ago. Repeated warnings to clear the brush and do controlled burns. Why didn't his government do the job and prevent or mitigate this disastrous fire?
Yes. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is always astonishing to hear the Leader of the Opposition talk about the impacts of the extreme weather events related to climate change while he opposes any climate action at all. He has no plan to fight climate change, which means no plan for affordability, which means no plan for the future of the Canadian economy. We have a price on pollution that is putting more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians where it applies, and is bringing down emissions and creating growth and jobs. That's what Canadians need.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he pretends you can put out forest fires with taxes. Clearly that has not worked.
Whoa.
What he's done is listen to his own officials who said that the mass buildup of fuel in the Jasper Valley as a result of dead trees needed to be addressed through controlled burns and other clearing methods, and also preparation so that we would have the ability to fight the fire if and when it ever started. All of this is documented in email correspondence and now testimony at a parliamentary committee. Instead of taxing Canadians into poverty, why didn't he fight forest fires?
Man, that is awesome that Pierre's standing up to that.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Jasper was one of the most fire-smart communities in the country. Over the past years, residents and leaders within Jasper have been exemplary in making sure they were doing everything they could to protect their community. This fire, Mr. Speaker...
I don't know why he's calling me they, but...
It jumped from treetop to treetop and through flaming pine cones, kilometers into ahead of it, which is what set this burn. This is a result of climate change, Mr. Speaker. Climate change he doesn't want to fight.
Woo-wee! So how much money until forest fires stop?
So that the people of Jasper